The morning started like any other in our small, two-story house in Springfield, Illinois. The air smelled of burnt toast and stale coffee, the kind of scent that clings to a home where routines have become a cage. I sat in my wheelchair by the kitchen window, staring at the frost creeping up the glass. It was late October, and the chill outside matched the one growing inside me. My name is Ellen Carter, and at 42, I felt like a ghost in my own life. My legs hadn't worked right since the accident 3 years ago. A car crash that left me with a fractured spine and a marriage that felt just as broken. My husband Tom was already gone for the day. He'd left before dawn, mumbling something about a work meeting. That was his excuse most mornings now. He'd kiss my forehead quick and cold, like he was checking a box, then vanish out the door. I didn't ask where he went anymore. Asking felt like begging, and I was done with that. I was done feeling like a burden, though the weight of it pressed on me every day. Tom had insisted we sleep in separate rooms last year, claiming my restless nights kept him awake. I didn't argue. I never did anymore. The house was quiet except for the hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. I wheeled myself to the counter, reaching for the kettle to make tea. My arms shook a little. Physical therapy helped, but I was far from strong. That's when Maria, our cleaning lady, walked in. Maria was a godsend. A sturdy woman in her 50s, with a thick Chicago accent and eyes that saw more than she let on. She'd been with us for 2 years. Not just cleaning, but helping me with things Tom didn't have time for. Bathing, dressing, getting into bed on bad days. "Morning, Ellen," Maria said, setting her purse on the counter. Her voice was warm, but there was an edge to it today. Like she was chewing on something she wasn't sure how to spit out. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile. "You're early." She nodded, tying her graying hair back. "Yeah, figured I'd get a head start. Place is a mess." She paused, wiping her hands on her jeans, and looked at me. Really looked at me, the way you do when you're about to drop a bomb. "Ellen, can I tell you something?" "Something weird?" My stomach tightened. Maria wasn't one for drama. If she said something was weird, it wasn't just her imagination. "What is it?" I asked, setting the kettle down. She glanced toward the hallway, like she was making sure we were alone. "This morning, I got here around 5. I saw Tom coming up from the basement. He was locking the door behind him real quick, like he didn't want anyone to notice." I frowned. "The basement?" Tom never went down there. It was a damp, cluttered space full of old furniture, boxes of junk, and a furnace that groaned like it was dying. He'd always said it gave him the creeps. "Maybe he was getting something," I said, though it sounded weak even to me. Maria shook her head. "That's not all. I heard voices down there, Ellen, not just his. Someone else. A woman, I think. Low, like they were trying to keep it quiet." My heart thudded, loud enough that I swore Maria could hear it. "A woman?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah." Maria's eyes darted to the hallway again. I didn't want to say anything, but it's not the first time. I've heard noises before late at night when I'm here cleaning, always when Tom's home. And he's always locking that door. I sat there, frozen, my hands gripping the arms of my wheelchair. Tom? With someone else? In our house? The thought hit me like a punch. But it wasn't just betrayal that stung. It was the idea that he'd been hiding something right under my nose. In a place I couldn't even get to. The basement stairs were impossible for me. Too steep, too narrow. I hadn't been down there since the accident. "Did you see anyone else?" I asked, my throat dry. "No," Maria admitted. "But I found where he hides the key. It's in that old coffee can in the garage, tucked behind the paint cans. I checked after he left." I stared at her, my mind racing. Tom had always been distant since the accident, but this was something else. Something deliberate. "Maria," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can you take me down there?" Her eyes widened. "Ellen, you sure?" "Those stairs, I need to know," I cut her off. "Please, help me." Maria hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but we gotta be careful. If he comes back." "He won't," I said, though I wasn't sure. Tom's schedule was unpredictable these days, and the thought of him catching us made my skin crawl. But I couldn't sit here, wondering, letting the suspicion eat me alive. I had to see for myself. Maria grabbed the key from the garage, and we moved to the basement door in the hallway. It was a heavy wooden door, painted white, but chipped at the edges, with a rusty deadbolt that looked out of place in our otherwise ordinary house. My wheelchair wouldn't fit through the narrow stairwell, so Maria helped me stand, supporting me as I leaned on her. My legs wobbled, pain shooting up my spine, but I gritted my teeth. I wasn't turning back. The key turned with a loud click and the door creaked open. A blast of cold, musty air hit us, carrying the faint smell of something sweet. Perfume, maybe. My stomach churned. Maria flicked on the light switch, but the single bulb at the bottom of the stairs barely lit the way. The steps were steep, covered in worn gray carpet, and the walls were lined with peeling paint. I clung to Maria's arm, my heart pounding as we started down. Each step felt like an eternity. My legs burned, and sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill. Maria kept whispering, "You okay?" "We can stop," but I shook my head. I had to know what was down there, what Tom was hiding. The voices Maria heard echoed in my mind, and I pictured him with someone else, laughing, whispering, while I sat upstairs like a forgotten piece of furniture. We reached the bottom, and Maria flipped another switch. A fluorescent light buzzed to life, casting a harsh glow over the basement. It was bigger than I remembered, with concrete walls and a low ceiling that made it feel like a tomb. Boxes were stacked in one corner, next to an old couch and a broken coffee table. The furnace hummed in the background, but my eyes were drawn to the far side of the room, where a tarp hung over something large, covering it completely. "What's that?" I whispered, pointing. Maria frowned. "I don't know. It wasn't here last time I cleaned down here." We shuffled closer, my legs trembling with every step. The tarp was blue, heavy, and tied down with bungee cords. My heart raced as Maria reached for one of the cords, her hands shaking. "You sure about this, Ellen?" she asked. "Do it," I said, my voice sharp. She pulled the cord loose, and the tarp fell to the floor with a soft thud. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Underneath was a wooden frame, like the start of a small room, with sheets of drywall leaning against it. But that wasn't what made my eyes sting with tears. Taped to one of the beams was a photograph, a picture of me, from before the accident. I was standing in our backyard, smiling, my hair catching the sunlight. Next to it was a calendar, marked with dates and notes in Tom's handwriting. Words like progress, delivery, and surprise were circled in red. "Ellen." Maria's voice was barely a whisper. "What is this?" I couldn't speak. My chest felt like it was caving in, and tears spilled down my cheeks. Was this some kind of shrine? A cruel joke? Or something else entirely? The sweet smell was stronger here, almost cloying, and I noticed a small table nearby with a candle, a bottle of perfume, and a stack of letters tied with a ribbon. My hands shook as I reached for them, but before I could, we heard a noise, a creak from the stairs. Maria grabbed my arm. "Someone's here," she hissed. My heart stopped. The creak came again, louder, deliberate. Someone was coming down the stairs. The creak on the stairs echoed in the basement like a gunshot. My heart slammed against my ribs, and I gripped Maria's arm so hard my knuckles turned white. The fluorescent light flickered above us, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The air felt heavier now, thick with that sweet perfume smell and something else. Fear. Maybe mine, maybe Maria's. We stood frozen by the wooden frame, the photograph of me staring back like a ghost from a life I barely remembered. "Ellen, we gotta move," Maria whispered, her voice tight. Her eyes darted to the stairs, where the creaking had stopped. Whoever was there wasn't moving anymore, but I could feel them, like a weight pressing down from above. "Who is it?" I hissed, my voice barely audible. My legs ached from standing, and I leaned harder on Maria, my wheelchair useless up in the kitchen. I cursed my body for failing me now, when I needed to run, to hide, to do something. "I don't know," Maria said, her hand hovering over the stack of letters on the table. "But we can't stay here." I wanted to grab those letters, to rip them open and see what Tom had written, what secrets he'd been keeping in this damp, hidden corner of our house. But the silence from the stairs was louder than any noise. It was the kind of quiet that screamed someone was listening, waiting. My eyes flicked to the tarp crumpled on the floor, then to the photograph of me, smiling in a world where I could still walk, still trust my husband. "Help me back," I said, my voice shaking. "We'll come back later." Maria nodded, but her face was pale, her lips pressed tight. She looped her arm around my waist, and we shuffled toward the stairs, my legs dragging like dead weight. Every step sent a jolt of pain up my spine, but I bit my lip and kept going. The basement felt like it was closing in, the walls leaning closer, the air growing colder. That sweet smell clung to my throat, making it hard to breathe. We were halfway to the stairs when the light flickered again, then went out. The darkness swallowed us whole, and I stifled a gasp. Maria's grip tightened. "It's just the bulb," she whispered, but her voice wavered. She fumbled for her phone. The screen's glow cutting through the black like a knife. The light caught the edges of the basement, boxes, the couch, the frame. But it also caught something else. A shadow moved at the top of the stairs, quick and deliberate, like someone stepping back out of sight. "Maria," I whispered, my heart racing. "Did you see that?" "Yeah," she breathed. "Come on, faster." We reached the base of the stairs, and Maria shone her phone upward. The stairwell was empty, but the door at the top was cracked open, letting in a sliver of light from the hallway. I hadn't noticed it before. Had we left it open? My mind raced, trying to remember, but panic blurred everything. Maria helped me up the first step, my hands clutching the railing. My legs screamed, but I pushed through, one agonizing step at a time. We were halfway up when we heard it, a soft thud, like a door closing somewhere in the house. Maria froze, and I nearly lost my grip on her. "That was upstairs," she whispered. "The front door." "Tom," I said, my voice barely a breath. He wasn't supposed to be back for hours. But the thought of him finding us here, in his locked basement, made my stomach twist. What would he do? What was he hiding that he'd locked away down here? "Stay quiet," Maria said, pulling me up another step. Her phone light wobbled, casting wild shadows on the walls. We moved as fast as my body allowed, the stairs creaking under us now. Every sound felt like a betrayal, announcing our presence to whoever or whatever was in the house. We reached the top, and Maria eased the basement door open wider. The hallway was empty, but the air felt wrong, like someone had just been there. The kitchen light was still on, my wheelchair sitting where we'd left it. But the house was too quiet. No hum of the TV, no clatter of dishes, just the faint tick of the clock on the wall. Maria helped me into the wheelchair, my hands shaking as I gripped the armrests. "Where's the key?" I asked, realizing she hadn't locked the door behind us. Maria's eyes widened. She patted her pockets, then cursed under her breath. "I left it downstairs." On the table. I stared at her, my pulse pounding in my ears. "We can't leave it there," I said. "If Tom sees it, he'll know we were down there." "I'll go back," she said, but her voice was unsteady. She glanced down the hall, toward the front door. "Let me check the house first. Make sure it's clear." I nodded, though every instinct screamed at me to get out, to wheel myself to the neighbor's house and never look back. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I knew what Tom was hiding, what that frame and those letters meant. Maria handed me her phone, the flashlight still on, and grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter. "Stay here," she said. "I'll be quick." She moved down the hall, her footsteps soft but deliberate. I sat there clutching the phone, the light shaking in my hands. The house felt alive, every creak and groan amplified in the silence. I kept my eyes on the basement door, half expecting it to swing open, for Tom to step out with that cold, distant look he'd worn for years. Or worse, someone else. The woman Maria heard, the one whose voice didn't belong in my house. Minutes dragged by, each one heavier than the last. I strained to hear Maria, but the house was a void, swallowing every sound. My fingers tightened around the phone, the light flickering as the battery dipped. I wheeled myself closer to the hallway, peering toward the living room. "Maria?" I called softly, my voice cracking. No answer. My stomach dropped. I called again, louder this time. But the silence pressed back, thick and suffocating. I moved forward, the wheelchair's wheels squeaking on the hardwood floor. The living room was dark, the curtains drawn tight. I shone the phone's light across the couch, the coffee table. The TV, nothing, no Maria, no Tom, no one. Then I heard it, a low murmur, like a voice muffled by walls. It was coming from the back of the house, near the guest bedroom. My heart raced, but I forced myself to move, wheeling down the hall as quietly as I could. The murmur grew clearer, and I realized it wasn't one voice, but two. A man and a woman, speaking in hushed tones, too low to make out the words. I stopped outside the guest bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. The voices were definitely coming from inside, and my blood ran cold. Tom's voice, deep, clipped, the way he sounded when he was stressed. And another, softer, unfamiliar. The woman. My hands shook as I reached for the door, but I stopped myself. What if they saw me? What if Tom was... I couldn't even finish the thought. Instead, I leaned closer, holding my breath, trying to catch their words. "She can't know," Tom said, his voice sharp. "Not yet. It's not ready," the woman replied, her voice too low to hear clearly. But it had a soothing tone, like she was calming him down. My mind spun. Not ready? What wasn't ready? The frame in the basement? The photograph of me? Or something worse? I backed away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I needed Maria. I needed to get out of here. I wheeled back toward the kitchen, but as I passed the basement door, I froze. The door was open wider now, and the key was gone from the table downstairs. I could see it from the top of the stairs. The table empty except for the letters and that damn candle. Someone had been down there. Someone had taken the key. "Maria!" I called louder now, panic overtaking caution. The house swallowed my voice, and the murmurs from the guest room stopped. Silence fell again, heavy and wrong. I wheeled to the front door, my hands fumbling with the lock. I had to get out, call the police, call someone. But as I reached for the handle, the door swung open from the outside. Tom stood there, his coat dusted with frost, his face pale and unreadable. Behind him was a woman I'd never seen before, tall, with dark hair and eyes that locked onto mine like she'd been expecting me. "Ellen," Tom said, his voice calm but edged with something I couldn't place. "What are you doing?" Tom's voice cut through the silence like a blade, calm but sharp enough to make my skin prickle. "Ellen, what are you doing?" he asked again, stepping into the house. The woman behind him followed, her dark hair catching the dim light from the kitchen. Her face was soft, almost kind, but her presence felt like an invasion. My hands trembled on the wheelchair's armrests. The phone's flashlight still clutched in my lap, its weak glow flickering like my courage. "Tom," I said, my voice cracking. "What's going on?" "Who is she?" I nodded toward the woman, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. My mind raced with images of the basement, the photograph of me, the letters, the frame, that sweet perfume smell that didn't belong. And where was Maria? The house felt like a trap, closing in around me. Tom's face softened, but not in the way I wanted. It was pity, not love in his eyes. "Ellen, you weren't supposed to be here." "Not like this." "Supposed to be where?" I snapped, anger rising over fear. "In my own house? Or in the basement, where you've been hiding things?" "I saw it, Tom. The picture, the notes, whatever you're building down there." My voice broke, tears burning my eyes. And Maria heard voices. "A woman, is that her?" I pointed at the stranger, my hand shaking. The woman's eyes widened, and she glanced at Tom, like she was waiting for him to explain. He sighed, rubbing his face with one hand, the way he did when he was exhausted. "Ellen, you've got it all wrong. This is Dr. Rachel Hayes. She's a physical therapist. I hired her to help with something for you." I stared at him, my mind stumbling over his words. "A therapist? In our basement? At 6 a.m? My voice rose, sharp and desperate. "Don't lie to me, Tom, not anymore." "I'm not lying," he said, stepping closer. I wheeled back instinctively, and he stopped, his hands raised like he was approaching a scared animal. "Rachel, can you give us a minute?" The woman, Rachel, nodded and stepped back outside, closing the door softly behind her. The click of the latch felt final, like it was sealing us into this moment. Tom knelt in front of me, his eyes searching mine. For the first time in years, he looked like the man I married, vulnerable, open, not the cold stranger who'd been slipping away from me. "Ellen, I need you to listen," he said, his voice low. "I've been working on something. A surprise, for you. But it wasn't ready, and I didn't want you to find out like this." "A surprise?" I laughed, but it came out bitter, choked with tears. "You lock the basement, hide keys, sneak around with some woman, and it's a surprise?" "Tom, I'm not stupid. I heard you in the guest room. She can't know, you said." "What can't I know?" He flinched like my words had hit him. "You heard that?" He shook his head, his jaw tight. Okay, I'll show you. But you have to trust me, just for a few minutes." "Can you do that?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream, to wheel myself out of this house and never look back. But something in his eyes stopped me. A flicker of the Tom I used to know. The one who'd held my hand in the hospital after the accident, promising we'd get through it together. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Tom stood and opened the basement door. The key was back in the lock, glinting under the kitchen light. Had he taken it? Or had someone else? My stomach twisted, but I followed him, wheeling to the top of the stairs. "I can't get down there," I said, my voice small. "I'll carry you," he said. Before I could protest, he lifted me from the wheelchair, his arms strong but gentle. It was the first time he'd touched me like that in years, and it broke something inside me. Tears spilled down my cheeks as he carried me down the stairs. The musty air wrapping around us. The fluorescent light buzzed back on, revealing the basement exactly as I'd left it, the tarp on the floor, the wooden frame, my photograph taped to the beam. Tom set me down on the old couch, his hands lingering on my shoulders for a moment before he stepped back. "Look," he said, pointing to the frame. "Really look." I forced myself to focus, wiping my eyes. The frame wasn't just a random structure. It was the start of a ramp, sturdy and wide, leading to a platform with a small table and a chair. The drywall leaned against it, ready to form walls. The calendar on the beam had dates circled, delivery dates for materials, appointments with contractors, and one word scrawled in big letters, Ellen. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Tom knelt again, his eyes wet now. "It's for you," he said. "A therapy room. Rachel's been helping me design it. We've been working down here at night when you're asleep, so you wouldn't know. I wanted it to be a surprise for your birthday next month. A place where you could work with Rachel, rebuild your strength, maybe even walk again one day." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "A therapy room?" My voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to get your hopes up," he said, his voice breaking. "After the accident, you stopped believing you could get better. You shut down, Ellen, and I didn't know how to reach you. I thought if I could give you this, show you I hadn't given up on you, maybe you'd start fighting again." Tears streamed down my face now, hot and unstoppable. I looked at the photograph of me, smiling in the sunlight, and the letters on the table. I reached for them, my hands shaking. "What are these?" I asked. Tom hesitated, then handed them to me. "Read them," he said softly. I untied the ribbon, my fingers fumbling. The first letter was in Tom's handwriting, dated a year ago. "Ellen, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but I need to write it. I'm sorry I've been distant. I'm scared too. Scared of losing you, not just to the accident, but to the way we've stopped talking. I'm building something for you, something to show you I still believe in us. I hope you'll see it one day." Each letter was like that, raw, honest, pouring out his guilt, his fear, his love. He wrote about the nights he'd cried in the basement, about how he blamed himself for not being enough, for not knowing how to help me. The perfume was Rachel's. She'd been here late, measuring the space, planning the ramp. The voices Maria heard were theirs, discussing exercises, equipment, hope. I sobbed, clutching the letters to my chest. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I thought you were leaving me, Tom. I thought I was a burden." He sank to the floor, tears streaming down his face. "You were never a burden, Ellen, never. I didn't know how to fix this. I thought I had to do it alone." We sat there crying together. The basement no longer a place of secrets, but a monument to his quiet, desperate hope. Maria appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale but relieved. She'd been hiding in the garage, scared when she heard Tom and Rachel, unsure what was happening. She apologized, tears in her eyes, and I hugged her, thanking her for being brave enough to tell me about the basement. Tom and I talked for hours that day, rebuilding something we'd both thought was lost. The therapy room wasn't finished, but Rachel started working with me the next week, right there in the basement. It was hard, painful, slow, but every step I took, even with help, felt like a step toward us again. Looking back, I see it wasn't just the accident that broke us. It was the silence, the fear, the way we let pain build walls between us. But those letters, that room, Tom's hidden hope, they tore those walls down. I'm not walking yet, but I'm fighting. And for the first time in years, I'm not fighting alone. Thank you for hearing my story, a real, raw journey through pain, doubt, and redemption. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to hear more Voiceless Grandma's tales that remind us how love can hide in the shadows, waiting to be found. Drop a comment below and share what moved you most. Have you ever faced a moment where everything you thought was wrong turned out to be right? Let's connect over these stories of hope and healing. Your support keeps these stories alive.